prepared for 2 Christmas dad jokes, so
Awesome.
I'll just like start us off with one if you're ready for it.
I think that's an important topic that,
like
100%, has to be addressed.
there. Okay, I'll kick it off with the joke.
Okay.
What does Santa pay for parking?
I don't know. What does Santa pay for parking?
Nothing. It's on the house. It's terrible. I was talking to somebody at work this week, and they were kind of just talking about like, hey, what are your must-haves when you're looking at people for culture and you're looking at people for like building a team, building an ERP team.
Wow.
And I like one of the first things I mentioned was a sense of humor, an ability to like cut the dryness in the room, because at the end of the day, we're working on ERP systems and they're not the sexiest topic.
It's about
of
as
the world.
dry as you get when it comes to a topic in life. Yeah, ERP. Yeah.
We were like, okay, yeah, today we argued and talked about sales tax and use tax. Like, I don't go to the dinner table at home and brag about those kind of things. So, like, to be able to have a sense of humor, you're like, you've got to have fun. And if you're not having fun, like, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to get you through those. Like you mentioned just before we started recording, you were talking about feeling 73 because of all the implementations and just the go through. You need that sense of humor. That's like the elixir that gets you through these things, right?
It's this fountain of youth. This topic around implementation prep, I definitely want to jump into this because I'm interested on your take on it, living in the partner realm for so long.
Yeah.
To me, I narrow it down to essentially 3 things on like your, like I would call them Beau-Tips or pro tips. Number 1 is inventory all your pain points. And that seems like a gimme, but I really would advise most end users and customers to do that before engaging a partner.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things is, to me, is like I've been on the end user side, I've been on the partner side. A lot of times, from my perspective, when I'm on the end user side, as soon as we start engaging a partner and they're sitting in meetings, it almost feels like a recorded clock has started. So It's almost like okay, the taxi tab is running. You better be getting some outcomes immediately. So the pressure is immediately there.
You bet.
But if you've gone and you've done a lot of your homework ahead of time and you've done like, hey, these are our pain points, these are our guiding principles, and you're not being charged hourly, and it's more of a like opportunity cost at that point instead of CapEx or OpEx, to me, you're way ahead of the race. Then you can talk to like real pain points to a partner, and they say these pain points can be covered by base D through C5 or that kind of thing. Or hey, this is a true gap. Have you thought about really changing your business and what is important to you? But for sure, inventory your pain points. Next is once you have that kickoff of the project and that like proverbial tab is running, assign champions like real early. And I'm coming from a champion perspective of like your change management and training champions, and because you're going to have like an implementation team, you're going to have those champions and like the core ERP team, but you need people who are going to be early adopters, and those people, like Brad in operations is.
Yeah, he's a cool dude, by the way. Yeah, wherever you go, whatever business you go into, Brad in operations is the coolest dude there.
Yeah, you immediately know. And
just walk in and say, "Where's Brad?" Okay, I'm good now. If you don't have a Brad, we got problems. Yeah, hire one and I'll come back.
We'll come back after you've hired a Brad in every department, and then finding those
Betty in finance, a Brad in operations, and a Betty in finance.
Oh yeah, without a Betty, finance is never getting implemented. No way.
It's done. You're done. So back to, I'm sorry I derailed you, but having your champions in place is super important. I mean, and I'm going to just roll back to your initial thought, and my number one advice to people, whether it was a partner or what I was doing myself, is like the old adage: when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time to plant a tree? Today. Yeah, you start this process now. If you're not even ready to implement, or if you're at that stage, or if it's a project, whatever it is, get your champions in place, get them excited, get them on board, so that ball is rolling way down a hill before you even get, like you said, when the partner comes in. It's like, I love to shock my doctor. When I go to the doctor, I do all this research and I come in and they're like, okay, we're going to talk. It's like, yeah, I know we're talking about the blah, 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 blah. It's like, what? Are you a medical student? It's like, no. I just am doing research. I'm getting prepared. I want to be there with you. So we're not spending the first hour of our time together trying to get me up to speed. And so that's what you're saying with a end users. Don't wait until the partner gets in the room and then you're feeling the pressure of, like you said, oh shit, the clock is rolling. These guys are charging me now by the hour, by the whatever, by the brick of gold to get this project done. And we are going to rush through this and not get maybe the result we want out of it.
Well, you start, I think that's when typical projects almost start to break down, because you're like, okay, well, it's been several months or it's been several quarters where we haven't had a go live or haven't had like a celebratory win that we can, and then you start craving that, or your board starts craving that kind of thing, and they're like, hey, we spent all this money and we haven't seen any outputs yet. Then they start reducing scope. Then this mythical MVP comes around, and then you hear things like fast follow. And then you're realistically implementing something that your change champions or your champions aren't even excited about anymore. And then you get away from that real early. Start involving and identifying champions early. Involve them in every one of the phases of the project, whether you're waterfall or hybrid or agile, it doesn't matter. Involve the business and don't make it just an IT kind of project. It should be, we're enabling the business through technology, and it should be them driving it.
And that hybrid philosophy is one that it's worked best for me. Like I think the minute I learned the term agile and waterfall, and I from an IT standpoint, we're always going to work in agile philosophy. We're gonna knock out small increments into a bigger piece. For folks in general, it's hard for them to get their minds around. But you made a good point in that. That's kind of the cool thing. You want to have a hybrid that's working on one side, but making sure that there's constant stream of wins, like important things you've identified in your project plan that says, hey, when we hit milestone 1, we may still be doing a waterfall. We may still be testing, and as far as the user is concerned, it may feel like a waterfall project, but you're giving those wins in that agile, just like, hey, we just finished this cool module. We're testing it. Boom, pop the champagne. This is something that, like you said, that Brad really wanted. And now Brad's super excited and stoked that got done. And then we work on Betty's thing over in finance, and she's super stoked and excited. And then we're back to Brad again, and he's back up with us. And that's a good sign of a good project management person in place that's like orchestrating all that. Like, okay, cool. I got the strings working. I got the winds working. Boom. It's just like you're working them all and bringing them to the end of this big crescendo, and ba-bum, and then the bass drum is hitting, and wham, you've got this great end result that doesn't feel, like you said, like, oh, we settled for something, or we got a big letdown at the end.
I love your point around like this like mythical, I would almost say mythical creature of a solid project manager, because at an end user life, like an end user's PM, almost it's very likely that they've never implemented an ERP system.
Right. Like, they're thrown in because they were the champion. They were the guy who spoke up. The person that spoke up in the meeting, like you coughed accidentally when somebody said something. Like, what? I did what?
Like, oh, you know how to spell ERP. Like, here you go. This is your turn. This is why we're about to, it's a good growth opportunity. But like the PM that they partner with on the SI side, that is their job. That is their, hey, let me bring you under my wing here and help you teach you. This is when the bass drum is going to hit. This is when the trombones are going to crescendo in.
Yeah.
This is when the tuba is going to come in and bring the bass and elevate the whole song. So, yeah, you're right. I think they're depending on how you look at a project manager, I think it matters. But it also is like, very make or break on the success of a project. And I think we kind of underscore or underplay the importance of a solid project manager these days.
I think a good SI, a good partner is going to come in and help you identify that internal team, make sure you're comfortable there. Ellipse did this, I think, really well when I was there. I was there, for 4 years, watched them work. It was part of many of those teams as a business analyst before I moved into the channel development side. And so got to really see the way they work. And a lot of it is that it's that prep work. It's all in the, stage of getting ready to, hey, we're kicking off here. But before then, we got a lot of work to do to get data ready, to get philosophies ready, to like you said, stack up all these, what you call them, inventorying the pain points through a process. It's not just, it's not just the first layer either. That's the fun part.
Right.
You've done a lot of analysis in your career. It's not just hey, what didn't work for you today? It's like this, or what do you want to change? I want, my favorite 100% was always, can we just put a field on the form to do something? And I would be like,
I like
no,
that.
we really can't just put a field on the form. But we can do something cooler. If you want to talk about it, I'm happy to dig in with you, because there's always something, miles below. That's like that old, the iceberg, they want the field on the form, which is that tip that's showing out of the water. But what they really want is well below the surface. And that's the fun part of like asking the right questions. And so whether you're the internal PM or you're the internal leader or you're the SI partner doing it, scratching and scratching and scratching until you get all that full bucket of what you're trying to accomplish. And then you can really start to hum.
This is going to be hilarious depending on how you edit this, because my clock is permanently set to 5 o'clock.
I love it. Yeah, so that's it. 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, it is literally 5 o'clock in this office all the time.
I love it. It's close enough to the end. It's a Friday on a holiday week ending. I mean, really, at 9 a.m. this morning, like you said, it was 5 o'clock. Yeah, it was like already hitting there. So just sipping a little bourbon as we roll along here.
This weekend will be my first time trying eggnog. So, yeah, I've made it.
Is it going to be homemade? Like somebody's actually, swirling the eggs and.
I'm trying the Martha Stewart eggnog.
Right.
Yeah,
nice. And what will you put inside of it?
Martha Stewart. Yeah.
What kind of liquid? What kind of adult liquid will go inside of it?
So her recipes got bourbon, rum, and there's a third liquor in there.
It was like a Long Island eggnog.
It's like very it's almost 95% alcohol, and then just like a little bit of nog.
More nog, less less nog and more
So I'm excited to try it. She recommends trying a small little teacup of it.
Yeah, it's like people who try marijuana for the first time. Now it's like, you don't go hog wild on a whole bag of edibles. Maybe just like Alice, just take a little lick once and see what happens. And if you don't fall out, then maybe take another one. Don't go popping a bunch of gummies without knowing what's happening here.
You're like, I ate the entire tray of brownies. Is that not what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, what? Is that not? What?
Probably going to want to lay down. Yeah, and just, you got handcuffs, you're going to need a handcuff.
Right before your first meeting with the in-laws at Christmas. Like, hey, I just wanted to chill out. I ate the whole, first one was so good.
I was so nervous. Yeah. And now it was just really relaxed, just to chill out. The third one is kind of ties into the loathing part, but is spending more time testing scenarios versus sitting in a meeting room debating what is perfect. So to me, I've always had this kind of mentality. Hey, we could do a ton of analysis. Granted, you should be doing some. You should be able to knock 10 scenarios into your top 3 if you're okay, is this how we really want to automate invoicing or consolidating invoicing? Or do we want to do this specific scenario? Arguing it in a conference room is never the same as actually testing it out and seeing the results. So much of our ERP system is financial based that you could find the perfect system for operations and it doesn't work for finance, and finance is going to win 10 out of 10 times. I've seen so many implementations go back and unautomate things so that we could enforce some specific field get filled in, or that it's like not automatable. It turns out. So not automatable. I don't know if that's a word. Doesn't matter.
I think we can go ahead and just grandfather that into the Webster's this year.
So that would be my 3 for implementation prep. Other than like just going through normal implementation mode, preparing from that scenario, or like setting the right mentality is crucial. So I liked your ad on a proper PM, or the right PM can make or break it. It's so interesting that like we think about, or I try to think about implementations as like this massive like cruise ship, or massive like Titanic-ish like ship. And from that perspective, they're hard to steer. And you're really making incremental changes, week after week, and then all of a sudden you've corrected your course. But from that analogy, you would think like inventory in your pain points, like a bad PM, like those are major adjustments.
Yeah.
But like on a major ship, like you almost have to get all of those rights so that you can make minor adjustments. Like, hey, our change control board is no longer engaged, and we're noticing everything is getting rubber stamped. Like to have a safe space to call that out, because most of the time the change control board is super senior, and they outrank almost everybody in the implementation team. So like having psychological safety and professional safety to raise those concerns is also one of those like pivotal things in your organization. If you don't have that, then it's almost like hey, we know the ship is off course, but we're going to end with 200 or 300 customizations at the end of this. And
right.
But hey, we used a control board and they approved them all.
And that same analogy, to your point, an ERP is the ship, and then your business is this ocean. You don't sometimes know you're even off course because you don't have there's no reference point. You've turned so far to the left, but it's just big, wide ocean.
Right.
And you're
there's
just
no land.
And don't even know that there's no land. And you need that good PM is kind of like that beacon that just kind of is like, okay. And I love, again, the point of a lot of times it's just a person. It's just, Brett, who happens to step up in the meeting and says something, or you always rely on them, but they don't have the skill set. And so I think that honest, objective conversation at the beginning is like, what is your skill set? We need to know, from the partner side, they should be doing that. It's like, hey, Beau, how many projects have you managed? 0. Okay. I know how I need to help you be a better, internal resource so that we don't go astray, because it's bad for everybody. If it goes bad, the partner looks bad. If it goes bad, Beau looks bad. If it goes bad, the CEO, everything comes down to this. It's not a great thing for anybody to have this project, like you said, spin in circles in the middle of the ocean and really not ever land at port. And you want that safety, like you said, that safety net of, I got support. I know I'm not a project manager at heart, but I've got support of the company for me to learn and grow. I've got support of the partner to help me find my way in this role so that I can do the job internally and help us be successful at the end.
You touched on something, and we keep essentially for the last 25 minutes have kind of just kept on highlighting it. It's the people. At the end of the day, you are implementing an ERP system, but it's all about the people.
Yeah.
And I think as you and I, as leaders, we're charged with making sure that they're successful, and we remove those barriers. We make sure that their success becomes the company's success. But that is our charge. We take care of the people that are in our charge. So we're not. It's less about being in charge than just making them successful. I think that the last 25 minutes we've been just kind of just dancing around that topic, but I love it. I think that it's inherent to me that you kind of match that same philosophy. So just
seen it work like you have. I've seen this work, and I've seen it fail when it doesn't work this way. And I would say the way I do it, or the way you do it, might not be exactly the same, but at the end of the day, the core principles are, and those core principles I think are fail safe. for a good project.
Well, this business has a funny way of washing you out if you don't follow some core principles. As I have kids and as I have a son growing up, I'm like, thinking about sports, thinking about those kind of things, and you see how sports are so much more than just that individual's talent, but it's the collection of the team and
100%
the situation that you get put in, and it's the situation that you make it out of. So
yeah,
I think, from that
when they
perspective,
argue like, hey, who's why were the Patriots successful? Was it Bill Belichick or was it Tom Brady? It's actually both, and it's not just those two guys. It's the ownership, and it's also all the role players, the other receivers like Troy
Wes
Vincent
Welker.
and Wes Welkers and those guys, and then the running backs, James Whites, that are just there at the right time at the right place, all with one focus and one mission.
More recently, who was the QB from? He played in the Vikings, and now he's at the Falcons.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins. I think they just benched him.
They did.
Yeah, and he's a phenomenal QB, and it's very much of a hey, there's not the right situation in the on the team, and the right players aren't necessarily there, and he's a phenomenal QB, but also like he doesn't have 5 championship rings, and he's got 1 playoff win.
So, Dan Marino is a great example of a guy who, I mean, there's no doubt he's in the conversation. He may not be named number 1 because he never won a championship, but from a stat line, from a talent line, he's one of the best to play the game and never won a thing. Always scrubbed out in the playoffs. And it's just there's a perfect storm of all this activity that brings together Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and and the GM that's bringing all this talent in and whatever, all these things that come together and the coaching around it that just makes, and so that philosophy is the same, I think, is what to the analogy is the same you would use in a company. If you've got the right PM and the right people who are passionate with the right leadership and the right partners, that boom, you're going to have a great, successful implementation.
So tell me something that you loathe. I'm dying to hear this.
Yeah. I'm thinking back to, and this, I no offense to all my EDI friends out there. When I implemented EDI, I hated it.
Are we talking like flat file EDI, or are we talking like even new school EDI? Like going through a van or going through?
This is through a van. This is 2018 about when I implemented 2017 or 18, somewhere in that range. Okay. So we had we were using, at the time it was just Data Masons for the AX side, and then SPS Commerce for the cloud side, transformations. And so, I mean, the software, everything's solid. It's just a complicated process. I mean, they're both solid organizations, good products. It's just a bear of a process to handle. And I couldn't convince our internal executives that this was the case. They're like, oh, one person can handle it. It's like, no, we were fighting chargebacks. I was like, guys, and I can't do this full time. I can't be a full time. You need a full time EDI administrator to handle all this. Plus, I mean, there's so many working parts to this, and it gets out of control quickly.
I've seen a lot of folks on the customer side think like EDI is going to be this silver bullet to, I'm no longer going to have all of my AP clerks doing processing.
Right.
And they could be off doing a lot more important things with their lives than, processing checks every day and doing 3-way matching, or, my procurement department will no longer have to validate that a message made it to a vendor and we got a receipt back, or like all of these EDI messages, it will just solve our business for us. And you almost made me think like the way that you think about EDI administration and how it's like, no, I don't want to, that is not what I want to do with the rest of my life. I avoid assigning myself the like data migration work. And that is like, I always get somebody to do that on the team, and I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, you are doing the Lord's work, and I'm going to make sure that you're happy because I know this work is not my favorite, and as long as you're happy doing it, like we're going to be just fine.
I love it.
Yeah, EDI administration, data migration, like neck and neck. On
security was always a pain too, and I don't know if you know how much you worked in AX, like the older versions, but
oh yeah,
security in like 2009 was like off the charts, complicated and stupid. I mean, you know, trying to set up security groups.
Yeah.
Pardon?
It didn't get much better in 2012.
Yeah, I don't think it was much better in 2012. I worked in both of them, like trying to find, like, hey, we want Beau to just be able to do this one thing. It's like, okay, this is going to take me 4 days. I'm going to start with just like, give him everything. Then give him half, then give him another half, and then give him another half. Oh, I found part of it, but now and you're going back and do it again, and then make one security role for that, import it.
We the last implementation I did for security, we assigned it to finance and accounting because we were able to export all of those security groups and roles, permissions, and privileges and duties. And they just put it in Excel, and they were off to the races with their pivot tables. And they're like, boop, 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 boop. Here's a custom role, like within a couple of minutes. And this is exactly what I need.
And you could just pour it back in.
It up to, port that over to like a dev, and he or she'd finish it up. It was chef's kiss the way that ended up working.
But that is good. Yeah.
Yeah. If I had to assign that same work to one of my devs or like somebody,
we'll overcomplicate that in a second.
Yeah. They're like, hold on, let me write something in AX to do this. It'll take me 6 months, and it'll be hell of a.
Yeah, I can see me overcomplicating that in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. I do think. What is your perspective on making solutions simple? And like you talked about, I could see myself overcomplicating that in a minute. I think it's almost one of those things that it's like pretty natural for us to think like, oh yeah, I'm a senior developer, an architect, or a senior functional architect, or a solution architect. Look at my grandiose, like complex plan that's going to be so perfect and it works in every scenario versus like, hey, this simple solution could possibly work for 90% of the day.
I feel like I was actually, aside from my last comment, if you take me for face value, I actually was pretty good at that. Where I was probably more of a pain for people was I wanted to think things through to the nth degree. Like, so it's like, this is cool for today, but what happens when, 3 weeks from now, you decide you want to add 14 characters to your item number, or how does this work if we do this? So I was, I felt like I had a good balance, Beau, to be honest, between like paralysis analysis, where I'm not trying to go too far, but I was trying to go far enough. Yeah. So it wasn't like we developed this, and by the time you get done a month later, it's like, oh, I forgot to tell you we do this. It's like, crap. Now everything I developed actually doesn't work anymore.
Right. Throw it out the window.
I've got to actually, instead of it just being people think, oh, cool. Can't you just, beat bop that in? I love it when people say it. It's like, oh, I wish people could, it's like, nah, it's not quite that simple. Sometimes it could. Sometimes you can click the beat bop button and it works. Other times it doesn't work at all. And you got to just, or just tell the person, sorry.
You having this like kind of refiner mentality. I love that. And I wasn't trying to infer that you can't simplify things, but it's like it is a nuance there, and I'd love to like kind of dive into that a little more on like how you mentally pull yourself out of the refiner mode, and you're like, hey, I've gone too far, or I've gone just far enough, or like, but we do need that. We need like that person in that room, and I think that's a lovely balance because it's very much of a like, in the moment, people are like, oh. Bobby's going to raise his hand and like poop all over this and it'll be like blown to shit. And then it's like, well, in 6 months, you're going to be pissed that I didn't raise my hand. It is like
100. That was my feelings. 100%. You're going to regret it when we moved on and you realize you wanted something a little different than if we stuck with the really, that really simple solution. Back to that, can we just put a field on the form? Yeah, I could do that and we'd be done in a day. And sometimes, to be honest, that is the thing, Beau. It's like sometimes you just need to do the simple thing, and it may be, hey, if this literally is going to take me 1 day and it's not complicated and it's not going to make a big deal and anything future forward, I would probably do it just because if it's like literally going to make your job 100 times better on a daily basis, I'm 100% going to do that. And without question, just say, hey, we're going to knock that out. It's a roadblock you don't need. It's easy for me to do. Boom, let's do it.
And that is something that you had to learn throughout the years. That was something that just became part of your DNA, right?
Yeah, I think I evolved to that point for sure. To answer your question, when do I know? I think, sometimes it's literally running out of runway in my own brain. Like sometimes it's like I think I've thought of everything at this point. I mean, I know I haven't, but at this point, the minute if I'm sitting around going, is there anything else? That's kind of the moment I know. Yeah. Wrap it up. We're done. There is nothing else. And if there is, it's probably not that important, or got to deal with it later. We'll get to it. Yeah. But at this point, we've talked it through enough. If I still am thinking of scenarios in the moment, like, and they're coming, one after the other, then I'm going to keep rolling with it for that point in time. And sometimes I even put a time frame. I say, hey, we're under a 2-week period to get this scoped out, or whatever it is, to meet our timeline. And so we've got to work through these analysis pieces within this 2-week time period. So we're going to keep cranking until
you find like a compromise, right?
You find a compromise, like, hey, we're going to stop here once we get to this point.
Yeah, it's like, hey, this is a risk, and we're accepting this risk. As long as we can verbalize that this is a potential future, then like, I'm okay moving on. And
sometimes it is just building those risks out, and that if you know projects, what we're talking about. You have a risk column that says, hey, through the process, we identified 10 risks, and maybe 3 of them we have to address. So we've got to go back and figure them out. But the other 7, we're okay with taking these risks. They're outliers, and we know, it might crop up, but it's once a year, and if that happens, we've got to work around. It's not blowing the system up. It's not stopping us from working. It's not a major risk. You can't cover every risk, because that you would never do a project, because in this vast ocean and this giant ship, there's no end to the number of risks you have.
We had that in our like risk and assumptions section of our FDDs. Mm-hmm. It was quite interesting to go through those on every FDD review, because it ended up being like half the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we need to reschedule this FDD review, because like we've answered some things that will change the design.
Yeah.
And I love that, because it's the number one, it tells me the customer is engaged, and like we have the business engaged. Number 2, it's like you end up with a better product at the end, and then our Brad and Betty are super happy.
Yeah. Like, and if Brad and Betty are happy, again, we're back to it. Yeah, this is the people you want happy at the end of a project, and keeping them excited through a project is and having them excited at the end of the project, you've won. I mean, even if the project's shit, if they're happy, they think they're happy, and it's like, okay, moving on.
Hey, that's almost like how I agree 100%. I think, let me look at my notes. I think the other thing that I loathe is, and I kind of touched about this a little bit earlier, but where you get really excited into like the kickoff of a project, and you have these like milestones or like guiding principles of like, hey, no customizations, or we're going to go into a scenario where like we're highly collaborative, and we're not going to have endless meetings. And then you fast forward 6 months later, and you're at, hey, we're making a celebration on going live with this 50th customization, and you do an audit at the end of the year, and like all of your ERP team is in the same meeting for 8 hours a day. And you're like, hold on, when is anybody getting their work done? Oh, after hours? Like, So those, I think it's always this like, and I'm not naive to it. I understand like what gets us there, but it's more of like this, oh, you're so like, these are so great on guiding principles, but like the cynic in me is like, yeah, we'll see you in 6 months, and we're going to be in all these meetings.
Right. Like, you don't want to be that cynic in the moment. You want, because people are excited, and you don't want to like be that, that wet blanket that's like, okay, but you kind of know.
Yeah. So Something I really liked about HEB is at every beginning of the year coming up here, actually, we took like a internal audit of how the process is going, how is everything going, and everything is on the table to change. And it was established as a culture that hey, this is when you throw it all on the table and pick out the good stuff, and then leave the bad stuff, on the cutting floor, or leave it on the table. And it's like every January we'd reset from 40 hours a meeting a week to 4, and like, okay, maybe we do stand ups asynchronously, and maybe we handle things like the FDD reviews with only the proper SMEs that are relevant, and versus the whole company. And,
right.
I think that was kind of something that I want to take going forward, is like this kind of mentality of New Year's resolutions don't have to just be personal; they can also be professional. I think that's like a kind of like this, fairy tale that's happening in my head almost. But
once upon a time, why not? We don't do enough of that in business. I think we do get stuck into just a rut of this is the way we do it. And is it really productive? Is this the most productive? If we start, I mean, going back to a football analogy, I love teams that, like, look at the Cardinals, and a number of teams have done this, but they drafted Josh Rosen the same year Josh Allen was drafted. So 5, 6, 7 years ago, number one, like he was, probably in the top 10, 15 quarterbacks drafted that year, ahead of Lamar Jackson, and they cut him the next year. They realized they made a big mistake. And even though he was the top, like a coveted draft pick, they're like, you know what? Doesn't matter. The 49ers just did this. Trey Lance is like, again, he's like, hey, we made a mistake. It's okay. We're not perfect. This wasn't the right fit. Maybe Trey Lance will get good at some point and he'll be great for another team, but it was not working here. And we're working with Brock Purdy now, and he's doing great. And this is what we were looking for. And so we're okay admitting this mistake, admitting this change needs to happen, regardless of when we implemented it or how much effort we put in. You can't say, well, we've already put in 45 whatever hours and we got to keep going. It's like, if it's really not working, get rid of it. Go on to something else.
Well, you touched on it really eloquently. Where in business, we get so stuck on this sunk cost. And we're like, man, we've spent so much damn money on this. It must work and it can't fail. And like, if you stop thinking that way, you immediately become like more agile and more having this openness to actually making the business better versus making this thing work. So I love that.
I love the scene in the Imitation Game where Alan Turing is building he's building the robot, the AI machine to break Enigma, and he does just keep cranking. He has that much belief, but he has to change his philosophy. So sometimes it's not abandoning the overall project necessarily, but the approach might change. So there's a nuance in there. It's like, hey, okay, we're done trying to work on a kick-ass machine that's going to solve Enigma. Let's move on to maybe we just weren't approaching Enigma properly, and we just need to rethink what we're doing within the project. And so the project values are we still want this machine, but the way we're going about it needs to change.
I think I don't have to say spoiler alert for that old of a movie. But
hopefully not. I mean, it'd be a weird spoiler alert. We did win World War II, but
right. We won it, and we did solve Enigma.
Real quickly, just introduce yourself. Like I don't want to forget that. People, I mean, they know you. But for the record, let's introduce yourself.
Beau Schwieso. I'm a leader at a company called Holt Group. I have been in this ERP game, fortunate enough to be in this ERP industry for 15 years. It's kind of crazy. And
it is crazy.
I kind of joke, and those who have heard my introduction to myself, I've been loving every minute of it. And I don't think you sit on a podcast or host a podcast if you aren't passionate about this topic and aren't passionate about your job. So I truly am loving every minute of it. And I live on this principle of better as possible. And I'm only seeing like half my webcam, but I've got another one here says, do what you love.
And, I love it, man. Yeah.
For me, I am very fortunate that I get to, talk ERP every day, and I get to write about it and hang with folks like yourself in the community. That it's really, if I felt like I would have gone into like SAP for an ERP industry, I don't know that their community is exactly the same. And so much of what I owe to the success of my where I am in my career, I owe it a lot to the community that's really built us up, and we build each other up. And regardless of competition or not, we all care about one another. And it's kind of like this like beautiful community that if you know, and you can't really explain it, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But that got off on a weird tangent, but
no, it was 100% awesome way to end this conversation, because I couldn't agree more. And it's like I'm doing something I love 100%, and that's I can't.
It's amazing that we get to do this. Enough. Okay, I really do got to go now.
Yep.
So, yep.
They're all invading you. You've just been. I like the end. I'm gonna find a way to work this in the invasion at the end.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Hi. Hello. It was great talking to you, Beau. Have a great. Hey, how are you?
Okay, he's gonna show you his snack. Okay, Bobby, awesome. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Have a great holiday, man. Talk to you soon.
All right. Merry Christmas.
Yep. You too,
Cheers.
buddy.
Oh.
Hey, there it is, a shoe.
A crazy hat. Okay. See you, sir. See you.